Hey, so we're at it again with another episode of Bad Ideas. I'm here with Kevin Prewett, the CEO and founder of Rising Tide Startups and Pod Brand Media. True story, Kevin and I actually met on a podcast forever ago. He's kind of the godfather of startup business podcasts. And of everyone I've ever met, he's probably talked to more startup business leaders. So his head is chock full of ideas I couldn't even imagine.
Mostly
Um,
bad.
that's the value,
No,
right?
that's right.
Um, so I'm really excited to do this episode with you because we'll kind of combine borrowed experience from Rising Tide and Pod Brand with bad ideas to see how we can react to whatever comes out of this envelope. So quick recap the format of this. Um, we'll reveal after finishing a proper introduction of you. We'll reveal the bad idea. We'll discuss the idea to make sure we both understand it for the first 10, and then we'll try to see if we can turn it into a business by combining our two brains with hopefully less bad ideas. Uh, does that sound good?
Let's go for it.
So first, kick off, Coach Kevin. A little bit of your background on Rising Tide, how you got into the startup space, what you've been doing the last couple of years, and how we got connected.
Just a real short recap. I was consuming business startup podcasts at such a level that I was consuming them faster than they could create them. I mean, good ones. And I saw that they were asking the same questions over and over and over again. It didn't matter who the interviewee was. It's just the same basic. There was 15 questions, and everybody pulled 5 out of that pool of 15. And I thought, somebody's got to be asking some different questions and looking at things from a different angle. So I just literally just set up a podcast, just completely pro bono, no revenue, just set it up and just started talking to people. And I just saw that there was such a need for people to be able to share their story. And it wasn't that you benefited from just going on 100 different podcasts because you were asked virtually the same questions over and over and over again. So I kind of flipped that on its head and said, how about if we interview business owners on a regular basis, and really it's their show. We're asking them deeper questions. We're going deeper in certain subjects, and they're creating content through this and really building a community around their brand. And that was where Pod Brand was born. So yeah, I've talked to more than 300 startup founders in the last 4 or 5 years and from 30 different countries. So yeah, I've got a pretty broad range of as many bad ideas as good. So anxious to jump in.
Yeah, no, I think the genius behind that, it kind of makes you like the Sherlock Holmes of the startup world. Because while everyone else is trying to figure out their own thing, like you're extracting the best of everything, which creates a really invaluable perspective when it comes to these things.
Well, you don't have to make your own mistakes if you learn from others. So there is a real value there for sure.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Cool. All right. So the big reveal, we'll consult the bad ideas in reverse envelope and see what we have today. So I actually haven't read this. There's a list that's been written down by someone um, that's being exposed to me. So our gem of a bad idea is networked Ubering.
Networked
Uh,
Ubering.
yeah. So look, I guess we'll apply a little interpretation. I'm assuming that must mean like it's like network marketing, but for Ubering, right?
We're going to need some more context, or we could chase this down a road.
But I think that's kind of the idea, right? So let's just assume that if we take like multi-level marketing, network marketing, and kind of apply it to this, um, yeah, that's a really bad idea. Okay, like if you rent an Uber for like X and then sell it to someone else for more than X, who sells it to someone else for more than X, um, you're like arbitraging Uber time and
No
specific routes.
doubt. And
Yeah,
it's got to be so quick because, if you call an Uber, you got 6 minutes to sell that on
I
before they
know,
show up. So
I know. It's like high
yeah,
frequency Uber trading. Like you're just booking the cars fast enough.
I'm a day trader of Uber. That's right, of Uber
Yeah,
rides. So yeah, I think your word, the use of the word arbitrage was generous at
yeah,
best.
yeah, yeah. I mean, imagine someone had the technology to do it. I imagine Apple would shut somebody down if they were booking that many rides that fast because they have to have multiple logins, right? Um, it would just send the price through the roof because they're effectively bidding against themselves at some point, right? Every degree you add has to
Yep.
pay more,
Yep. Yep.
and the driver gets screwed too, right? Because they're only getting the original price, and it's getting resold thereafter.
Plus, are there fees every time you have a transaction? You know that
Oh,
you're
it must
paying,
be.
you're selling, if you're selling that on, and you've got to build a platform to do that.
Hmm.
You know,
Uber would
so
love it.
yeah,
Uber would
Uber
love
would.
it.
They may. I mean, they may not because they think, hey, there's levels that they've been cut out of, so
Yeah,
they don't like. They want their cut at every level.
yeah. No, it's like a trading desk. Like they take their margin and they take their spread on every transaction, even if it's the same thing. This is like introducing leverage into like Uber and ride sharing.
Into a space that doesn't have leverage.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah, one thing there's a one problem is that just you would have to have sheer scale because the margins are so narrow, so micro thin. So you've got
hmm
to do this broadly to make any.
hmm
I mean, you're making more flipping burgers at McDonald's than you are doing this, per hour.
yeah, yeah. Well, and you have to recruit instantaneously. I think that's where the real invention would have to be. Because from what I understand, I have very limited exposure to network marketing. I don't know if you've talked to more, but like it's basically like people buy into an opportunity to sell a product,
Yep.
and then brands at the top level sign a contract with the marketing company for distribution through the network.
Hmm.
So people buy in at the bottom, brands buy in at the top, and you're basically multiple people are paying for the right to sell this product. And the network all the way at the bottom is where you get massive distribution and volume out of it. That's how it works.
Well, there has to be enough skin in the game at every level.
Hmm.
And if you have thin margins, you've already sliced it so thin, you can't. I mean, to sell it on, there's not enough meat
Yeah,
left on the bone, to make it
yeah.
worthwhile. Yeah, crazy
So with this
idea.
one, this is a bad
Crazy
idea.
idea.
This is
That's
a bad idea.
yeah. Let's
Um, I'm wondering if you, because if you're trying to introduce the network effect into this, you have to have enough people looking for your prices that they would buy the second you buy, and so on, in like a cascading effect. Um, So it's almost like I mean, we're kind of getting into solutions here, but it's almost like people create bots and they're all stacked on top of each other
it would have
and
to
they're
be.
all able to buy. Yeah.
It's like programmatic trading. I mean, it has to
Yeah.
be. It would have to be bot driven. But it seems like to me that you're actually competing against yourself. So
At some point.
you've created a competitor for Uber. Because if you're
On
selling
Uber.
this on Uber, yeah, you're creating a
Yeah.
competitor against Uber using Uber.
Yeah.
So it seems to be a bit self-defeating.
Yeah. All right. This is king bad idea so far. With have you ever talked to founders doing any kind of like ride sharing or um kind of like social distribution type things like Uber does? Um,
Not necessarily in cars, but
yeah.
like I interviewed a guy in Australia that really it was the sharing economy.
Hmm.
More than anything. Like I've got a lawnmower I'm not using, or I've got a
Hmm.
rake, or I've got tools, or I've got a barbecue pit, or whatever it is. That I want to make available to the community, and you can rent it on an hourly basis, or days, or weeks, or months, or whatever. So that's probably as close as anything I've seen, kind of in the space.
Yeah. I mean, well, the issue with all those, that's why I'm asking, is supply at the end of the day,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like they don't have enough things to sell or rent. Um, we were talking in the last episode about Turo, and it's the same deal. You don't have enough cars. You can't
Hmm.
do enough volume to actually make your margin. Um, yeah, that was Uber's issue too in the beginning. Remember, they were Uber premium, so like
Yep.
every car was black, so
Yep.
they could charge a whole lot more, but also make it seem exclusive. Um, it's a really clever way to frame a weakness as a strength. Like they make it seem exclusive, so
That's
people
right.
want in, and that creates volume. But this makes it even more exclusive because you have tons of people buying every single time a ride becomes available.
I
So
don't
like you're
see
just
the the advantage though, instead of just create a competitor, just set up as a competitor. I don't see the advantage of building it on top of Uber.
Yeah.
Now if it's complimentary service, I mean, if it's something that we can as an add-on, to an Uber ride, that's one thing. But this is adding on price and cost.
It's a terrible idea. Like let's take our supply, make it dramatically more expensive, and cut out our own margin. That's a great idea.
Yep. You
Well,
summed it up right there.
so on the advantage side, this is the mental test for us. Like if we have to figure out a way to turn an awful idea like this into something real that actually makes sense, like what are some of the benefits or pain points we could start to look at that might reveal some opportunity for something like this?
I think one thing that you can see it's like everybody has said, we are the Uber of everything. We're the Uber
Yeah.
of, fill in the blanks. So obviously it's a proven concept. I mean,
Hmm.
the demand is there, like you said. I mean, there's millions of people, ordering Ubers at any given time. There's always, in a service like that, there's always a little bit of, space and margin that could be dissected a little more thinly, over time.
More
Now,
price competition.
yeah, there's or price elasticity, in the particular service. But I, yeah, I'm struggling to put lipstick on the pig here. I
No, I've got some crazy ideas to stoke the fire a little bit. So, we identified the problem in supply, right? Um, and this is rattling around just as we talk, so it's going to come out sounding as bad as the original idea, but we'll dive into it when we get there. Um, if supply is the issue, I think supply is the issue probably because there's so much variability in what someone. To think about it from the Uber driver's perspective, even though the network is purely buy side, from the Uber driver's perspective, when you go out on like a Friday or Saturday night, unless you're in a major city, like you're happy with what, $80, $100,
yeah,
$120 for the
yeah,
night, and you might have to work anywhere from like 6 to 10 hours to make that. So your compensation per hour and return per hour is extremely variable, uncertain. Like the time commitment is there. That said, you can like be on your phone or hanging out at a Dunkin' the other, 3 or 4 hours. So it's
sure.
a flexible job, which has value in and of itself. But thinking back to that arbitrage opportunity, if we're driving massive price inflation, is there a way for that consumer competition that the network distribution brings into the app? Again, this is all assuming you could make it work to almost guarantee income back to the drivers. Um, Again, this is daisy chaining some things, but if you put
Yeah.
that much pressure on the price, by creating a stupid bot that bids against itself, can you get to the point where you can almost guarantee income to drivers and dramatically increase supply, which ultimately benefits everybody because you're buying faster at a higher price, from more suppliers? Does that is that a strategy that you could kind of look into? Does it make any sense?
Yeah, my question is, do you know, I mean, are you integrated in the Uber system, or are you trying to kind of operate outside it? Because how would you connect, any added value to the driver without being integrated into Uber?
You see that you go saying like good ideas. This is the bad ideas podcast. Remember, we can't be super smart and actually go create a good business. We're trying to make something really bad work. But yeah, that would be the way. You go create a new app and compete with Uber and bring marketing power to it.
Or integrate within Uber's app, or say there's some added value we provide, that
Yeah.
we're providing, mental health, assistance to Uber drivers. We're providing cleaning of the cars, whatever that added value is
Mhm.
that within that system. But one other thought that came to my mind a little bit was like, is there a reason that somebody would choose this service over Uber? Like, is it more green? Is it more is it a do good, social good? Do we donate 10% to a charity? that type of thing. I mean, is there a reason that they would choose this even at a higher price?
I think distribution would have to be so. Assuming that we did make a competing app and the app's value was that it had this network marketing engine on
Mm-hmm.
my side.
Yep.
Um, so you're tied into everyone in real time through some kind of bot, so there's constant demand.
Right.
Your ultimate value, again, is going to be on the supply side because every driver is going to want to be on that app because it's selling rides so fast.
Mm.
Like you're almost converting Ubers back into bus routes because every single time, um, like a ride is requested or a route is requested, somebody pays for it, and then someone else pays for it, and then someone else pays for it.
Wow. Yeah. That. Yes. And that's what happens in a pyramid scheme. it's,
Yeah,
it's an Uber Ponzi scheme. Is what it sounds like.
yeah. This is a bad idea. But bringing it back to the app, I'm just thinking about like what would have to be true in order to guarantee income to drivers. Because I think that's a big challenge for a lot of these, you know, traditional workers moving into gig economy. They can't predict, their income.
Mm.
So, they wind up working crazy variable time to make the same. But if you could guarantee demand, which nobody can, we'll have to explore that one in the next couple minutes. But in theory, if you can guarantee demand, like every ride will be sold and it'll be sold right away. Um, you'd have people out there like running almost bus routes all coordinated through Uber. Um, the challenge that's what we have to explore next. Like, could a network marketing funnel somehow like guarantee demand for like random ride routes in a predictable fashion? Because to guarantee demand, you'd have to be buying routes no matter what.
Right.
So you'd have to
You're gonna
somehow
eat some.
predict
Yeah.
you're going to eat some, which is probably going to be expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But you also kind of have to predict where people want to go, right?
And actually, the driver needs to know if this is a true route or just a pre-purchased route that is not going to happen because they don't want to drive 20 miles to the airport to pick somebody up and they're not there.
Yeah.
So one advantage I see if you could do this at scale is that you could have drivers that were pretty focused in a specific area. I love the idea of the bus route. I mean, if they knew that they're just driving in a 10 block radius, versus 30 miles, you're spending the same amount of time, but you're making a lot more money, and it's costing you a lot less to operate.
That's a brilliant idea. And then if the app can coordinate where the cars are at all times,
Mm-hmm.
and segregate them so they're not all
Mm-hmm.
running the same route, but they're all getting paid
Based
and
on
perpetuated.
demand, like peak times and like when the flights
Yeah.
come in at the airport, that type of thing. So,
Yeah. It's going to make Uber a lot more expensive. It's going to make the drivers make a lot more money. But
mm-hmm.
um, I guess the upside is that in theory, you can get an Uber in a second anywhere to anywhere. Like all you need to
Right.
do is pinpoint where you're going to go, and someone's already running that route for you. Um, and they'll
But
get to
you've
you a
got
lot
that option.
faster.
That option is still going to exist. This is like Uber. So they're coming up with the idea of like, you can save money if you're not in that big a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of Uber. So I don't know what it's called. Uber Select, Uber Wait, Uber. Uber. I'm not in a hurry. But there is. You can choose that option. When you order an Uber that says if I'm not in a big hurry, it's going to drop $5 or something like that. So, you can build that in. I'm not sure that the price would go up because if you could reduce waste and in expenses for drivers, then and you really create a better margin for them per ride, then I think maybe you could keep prices pretty close to where they are.
Yeah.
So
We're getting into
in an ideal
deep
world,
economics. That stuff's over my head. I don't do math on the fly. I stick with the bad ideas.
this is still a bad idea.
It's definitely a
We
bad idea.
haven't cured it yet.
We do not recommend
We do
pursuing
not,
this idea.
do not go out and buy the domain.
Yeah.
Ubercompetitor.com.
Yeah.
Uberbot.
But you wonder, Uberbot, moving into the next phase of Uber. I mean, they're doing the aerial drones now. Don't they have those? They're testing them in like LA or San Francisco or something, right? Or is that
These are
to come?
rideshare,
Yeah, they're drones. They're all
like
electric
air
and it's like,
taxis.
yeah. Are those live yet? Or are they still just
I have
experimental?
no idea. I know that there are versions out there, but didn't know that Uber was getting into that. I hadn't seen that, so
No, I
I'm not
mean,
surprised. I mean, Amazon's dropping stuff off using drones. Why not do air taxis?
humans, right?
Hmm.
But those have to have routes, right? Like that doesn't make sense to do on demand.
Well, yeah. I mean, can you imagine trying to land it in somebody's backyard or
Hmm.
hit a power line in front of their house or something like that? Yeah, that probably has to go from point A to point B in a
Hmm.
pre-designated route and a trajectory, and a
Hmm.
flight plan. So.
That's where this whole like bus route concept gets interesting. Again, a lot of work would have to go into place to even figure out how to network
Hmm.
market something like this in the app in real time. But if you have guaranteed demand and you have all of your delivery men and drivers running, fixed routes,
Yeah.
then instead of currently Uber routes through roads,
Hmm.
like they navigate you through traffic to get from A to B. Um, with this type of demand, they could navigate through drivers. So,
Yes.
maybe you take two or three different rides, but you have a bunch of people doing really rapid, high margin, short trips.
Hmm.
And then something like an aerial taxi would make a lot more sense because you know exactly how much energy you need to do the route a fixed number of times or something like that.
I mean, it's a little bit like the train concept. The one advantage of taking a train is that you avoid traffic. You
Mm-hmm.
avoid the kind of, as the French word is, perturbation, which means like you just traffic jams. So it
Mm-hmm.
is. Yeah, I could see even point to point, if you had pre-designated point to points with doing like the air taxi idea, and then Uber from those out like a spider web. So
Yeah.
they're and pre-designated spots. It everything cycles back to your idea of the bus route. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it exactly is what it is. It's you have main routes, and then you have kind of these auxiliary routes that go off of them. So yeah, it's I still think you can probably make more money at McDonald's, but
Yeah. Yeah. You're probably going to buy a lot of rides that never happen.
it's
But
interesting.
this
Although you get
behavior,
better and better. You're the I mean, just with the metrics, the analytics will make your predictive analysis better and better over time. Of how where the demand is and where you need to meet it. So
does something like this change the way that people look at transportation? Thinking back to Uber, once ride sharing became a thing that anybody could do and it was mainstreamed. I mean, I remember when it was back in the day when it was weird to get in a stranger's car
or
for a
sleep on
ride.
their couch.
I know. And now Airbnb and Uber,
Yep,
like it's not even not strange. It's like a sought after thing.
it
People are
is.
excited about Airbnb. Um, but that like I think that really changed the way people thought about inner city travel
Hmm.
and how to get from A to B, like particularly going out. Hopefully, much less drinking and driving. Like, what does something like this do to the way people travel? If there are baked in routes that any gig worker can hop in and run for some kind of guaranteed premium, does that change the way that people move from A to B?
Well, think about Europe in contrast to the States. So the
Mm-hmm.
property around like major metro hubs is a lot more expensive than it is, a long walk from those hubs. So people want to live closer, to those transportation routes because it cuts down their commute time. And
Mm-hmm.
if I can assure you that we're going to avoid, high traffic areas, you're going to get to work on a kind of predicted time. If you adjust just slightly, there's a big benefit to that. Then I think people will adjust, and I think we have. I mean, when's the last time that somebody actually took a taxi, versus an Uber? I can't remember the last time. I mean, it's like it's completely replaced. Now, Airbnb has not completely replaced hotels, but it sure seems like Uber and Lyft have almost replaced taxis, except
Yeah,
in major cities.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I took a taxi from Logan to my place last time I flew home, but that's just because they don't let the Ubers get close.
So you got to
The
walk a
tax,
mile to catch them now.
yeah, the taxi lobby is extra powerful.
Hmm.
But I'm thinking about so this is ultra nerdy, but like Google's algorithm for search. When you pay for an ad, you're basically telling Google that you care about the people looking for that search term
Yep.
enough to pay for it, often a lot. So Google knows the second someone's searching, show your ad because it's worth something for you. Like kind of in the same light, and the value here is more in the routes than it is in the demand, but big demand leads to consistent routes being run by
Hmm.
these gig drivers. Probably opens up the opportunity for you to flash that there's a driver in the area to anyone who has the app who's nearby. So that's where you get the baked in demand. If there's,
Yep.
50, 70 people with the app, and it's fairly cheap to go a short distance, but every time there's a driver nearby, it pops so they know they can hop in.
Right.
You realize like properly on demand ride. You just walk outside and there's someone there and you
Hmm.
go. Uh, and that becomes the bet. The algorithm needs to figure out the likelihood of someone buying and use that to adjust on how much leverage they apply to the price. And the driver benefits at the end of the day. They're getting paid a fixed amount based on the probability that someone will take that route, or multiple people will take pieces of it. Look
Well,
at
imagine
this.
though, imagine like travelers landing,
Yeah.
and they're walking through the airport, they're going to collect their bags or whatever. All of a sudden, every one of their phones is pinging, hey, you need a ride?
They're
Here it
going to
is. I
take
mean,
it.
they're
Yeah.
gonna here, just click this button and your driver's outside. I mean, it's
Yeah.
that simple, but it's push notifications for, based on activity. I mean, you know, say anything around Alexa right now, and the next thing you know, Google is showing you ads for whatever you were talking about in the kitchen. It's
Exactly.
it's the similar concept of
Yeah.
knowing. Like, I walk up to my house and my phone says, you more than likely use your automatic door lock app every time you come up to your house. So I'm going to show you that first when you open your phone. I mean, it is that intrusive,
Mm-hmm.
so just
Yeah,
trying
it's
to
the
do the
same
same.
thing. Like they're trying to use your situation to create demand so they can
Yep.
create value for where they make money, which is that transaction.
You
Um,
also know where
but
the herd mentality is. Like, if you
mhm,
have a million app users out there, you
mhm,
you know by them using the location services on their phone, where they're huddling. Where there's
mhm,
a large mass of them, so you kind of put cars in that area.
mhm,
So, and there's so many things working, toward knowing how to meet the demand.
mhm. That's super interesting. So then your network, like the network and the network marketing, isn't actually like individual people. Like as I understand it, multi-level marketing, there's people in their personal networks that are
Hmm.
buying the products and so on. In this, it'd be like a network of applications, right? Like you'd want to tie into technology platforms that all the local people are using, so you can make sure that everyone who's in the area sees that there's a driver nearby that they can hop on. So like you're daisy chaining and
Yep.
purchasing through a network of other technologies, so you get maximum visibility and increase the probability that you sell the ride.
But there you go, slicing that margin up again. I mean, everybody's going to want a cut of it. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I get 0.0003% of every ride that happens. But if there's a million rides, that's a different animal.
We have a new professional class of trader, someone who just buys and sells rides on margin. Interesting.
But they're not
We've
doing it. There's some bot doing it, but they're just making
yeah,
sure the computer's turned on.
yeah, and that there's money in the bank. All right. Well, this has been an exploration. So we think that networked Ubering is multi-level version of ride sharing. And the discussion has revealed to us that we think it's interesting to explore some kind of guaranteed income for gig drivers. Um, we're particularly interested in fixed routes and coordinated fixed routes,
Yeah.
so there's distribution everywhere at all times.
Predictive. Yeah.
Predictive, yeah, and you brought up the point that apps could guarantee demand by using location
Hmm.
services to map rides where most of the people are and make sure that all the people know where the nearest ride is at all times. Um, Someone would have to figure out how to make that not annoying. So, like to predict when someone is in the state of mind to buy a ride, but that can't be that hard. Uh, Interesting. Final thoughts?
I think there's a lot of good ideas out there that I would probably spend more time diving into than this one.
I agree with you. I think this is a bad idea, but I really appreciate you lending some input and the vast amount of experience you bring to these conversations. Um, this was a fun one to explore with you.
Well, buddy, thanks for having me on. It's looking forward to doing this again.
Yeah.